Well, hello, my dear friends. Justyn Smith here, and I want to thank you so much for choosing to click play. We are moving chapter by chapter through the Bible, and today we are in 1 Samuel chapter 26. As we're in 1 Samuel chapter 26, we want to talk about this title, While You Are Sleeping. The title is While You Are Sleeping. Now, I'd love to take the time to go through the Bible and talk about how good sleep is. Okay, when it comes down to physical rest, that's a good thing. I'd love to take time to show you and tell you how God Himself doesn't slumber nor sleep. If I had the time, I would also take you to verses in the Proverbs, especially that deal with laziness when there should be a fervency. And that would be more along the lines of what we are talking about in this particular study, While You Are Sleeping. There are some things that we are either ignoring or we are being lazy about, and therefore we are being defeated instead of being victorious. And there are some simple truths that are found right here in the testimony of Saul that happened to him while he was physically sleeping that we will then apply to our spiritual lives. My name is Justyn Smith with the Heart for Revival Ministries. Please take some time as you are able to visit us online at heartforrevival.com. But most importantly, let's let the ministry of the Word of God impact our hearts today as we hear through our ears. Once again, the statement is, while you are sleeping. What takes place while you are sleeping? If you choose today to fall asleep on the Lord, if you choose today to fall asleep on what is right, if you choose today to fall asleep and not be faithful, if you cease, if you are like those in Psalm 12, which recently we spoke on or will speak on, the Psalm 12, help Lord, for the godly man ceaseth, the faithful fail from among the children of men. I believe that's coming up in the future. You can listen to that psalm and be challenged on what that means, but you and I can easily find ourselves in that position where our cares and concerns in this life are in the wrong direction instead of in the right direction. Let's consider this point number one. Saul was asleep chasing the wrong things. Saul was asleep chasing the wrong things. And when I bring this point to you, there needs to be the understanding, especially if this is your first time listening to us preach from 1 Samuel, you need to be put in remembrance or put into mind that David is being chased by Saul the king. David has been greatly used in the kingdom of Saul to help win battles and even encourage Saul. But Saul got a little bit jealous over David because of how the people were praising David for killing Goliath. And Saul's envy began to build, and then Saul tries to kill David, but David runs. And David takes off. And this has happened a couple different times where the fear of his life's taken place. And now David has a band of mighty men rallied around him. And David's already proved once that he could have taken out Saul. But David's like, you're the anointed one. I'm not going to do that. And Saul went back home. But here we find it again. Saul busies himself chasing the wrong things. And now he's actually physically asleep. But while he's doing that, while he's asleep, while he's pillowing his head, he's doing so in a situation where he is chasing after David again. Notice the verses. So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping within the trench, and his spear stuck in the ground at his bolster, but Abner and the people lay round about him. Those are those with Saul. Then said Abishai to David, God hath delivered thine enemy into thine hand this day. Now therefore let me smite him, I pray, with the spear even to the earth at once, and I will not smite him the second time. Like, I'm going to do it right the first time, he's going to be dead. And David said to Abishai, destroy him not, for who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? I love the integrity of David. David said, therefore, as the Lord liveth, the Lord shall smite him, or his day shall come to die, or he shall descend into battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch forth my hand against the Lord's anointed, but I will pray thee, take thou now the spear that is at his bolster and the cruse of water, and let us go. Okay, so gather the understanding. Saul's sleeping. David has another scenario take place where he's come across this, and this sleep that God has given to them allows David and Abishai to creep up, and Abishai is like, I'm going to take him out, David. Okay, hold me back, David, hold me back. But, David's like, nope, I'm going to hold you back because this is not what we should do. God's going to take care of it, but here's what we can do. Let's take the spear. Let's take the cruse of water. And it's very similar to that time where David cut off the garment. David cut off the garment. He was a little bit ashamed of that. But now here's a situation where Saul's doing it again. He's chasing for me again. My life is being threatened again. Okay, Abishai, what I will let you do is take the spear and the cruse of water. Number 2, Saul was asleep, losing his weapon. Okay, so first of all, Saul was asleep chasing the wrong things. And if we've fallen asleep on God and the way of God, we're chasing the wrong things. And when we fall asleep on the things of God, we might lose our weapons like Saul lost his weapon. Therefore, we're weaponless. Verse number 12, so David took the spear and the cruse of water from Saul's bolster, and they gat them away, and no man saw it, nor knew it, neither awaked, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord was fallen upon them. So the Lord is allowing this to take place, okay? The Lord is just showing his approval of David's integrity over King Saul. Okay, and you do reap what you sow, by the way. And as you consider David making this choice, here is Saul, and we preach on him today. Because Saul is losing a lot of things in his pursuit after David. First of all, he's chasing after the wrong things. And secondly, he loses his weapon. He loses a way of protecting himself. And when you go after the wrong things in this life, it's like you're throwing the weapons out that God's given you to triumph in victory in the name of Jesus. And then number 3, Saul was asleep losing his water. Okay, not only did he lose his weapon to be able to fight off an enemy, because what if the real enemy came? Okay, the real enemy is not going to be like David. Don't touch Saul. The real enemy is going to be like, take out Saul and do not be kind. Be ruthless like Abishai wanted to be. I'll kill him dead. I won't need to stick him a second time. I'll get him the first time. He's vulnerable right now. Saul was asleep losing his weapon, and now Saul was asleep losing his water. He needed water. He needed it to be able to have strength. His body, just like yours, needs water to be able to go forward. So David takes Saul's weapon. David takes Saul's water, and now Saul is in the place of being rendered useless if he tries to get up and do something. I mean, if he fights, he's going to get thirsty real quick. I mean, you know how thirsty you get if you take a run. I mean, just imagine fighting somebody. It only takes a minute and you are worn out. Assuming he's a mighty warrior, it could take a little bit longer, but you get worn out. You need water. Okay? And as you consider quenching your thirst, we are reminded in verse 12 that David took the spear and the cruse of water from Saul's bolster. And God is allowing all of this to happen just to remind Saul, you're going after the wrong things. You're losing your weapon. You're losing your water. And hey, number 4, Saul, you were asleep losing your war. Saul was asleep losing his war. Okay, the war that he chose was not against the Philistines. The war that he chose was against David. And as Saul chose to go to battle against David again, when he said, I'm not going to do that again, when he left ashamed the last time, Saul comes back and chooses to face the wrong things in this life again. He should not be going after David. He should be going after the actual enemy, but he's not. Saul was asleep, losing his war. Notice what it says in verse 12 again. So David took the spear and the cruse of water from Saul's bolster, and they gat them away, and no man saw it, nor knew it, neither awaked, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord was fallen upon them. They could have attacked David, but they were sleeping. They were asleep. They could have attacked David, but a deep sleep from the Lord was upon them. Whose side was God on? Whose side was David on? Whose side was Saul on? Saul was asleep, losing his war. And there's battles out there. There's always going to be battles out there. And we are losing those battles today because we are lazy, because we are asleep spiritually. We need to wake up. Number 5, when Saul awoke, he was deeply ashamed. When Saul awoke, he was deeply ashamed. And friends, this is where we find ourselves as believers, okay? We hear that message at church. Man, it's been such a long time since I've been to church. Or we have that one friend that so loves us to the Lord. And then we realize our hearts, oh man, I should never have left. I was that godly man that ceased. I was a faithful that failed from among the children of men. I'm so sorry, Lord. And here's Saul waking up to the situation, and there's lots of scriptures that we're skipping over. But notice, if you take the time, you will notice that David cries out, and David gives a great speech again, and David is stating, I'm not going to touch the Lord's anointed. Saul, you just need to give this thing up, okay? Then notice what Saul responds to David. Saul knew David's voice and said, is this thy voice, my son David? That happened earlier too in the previous chapters. And David said, it is my voice, my Lord, O king. Then Saul said to David, blessed be thou, my son David. Thou shalt both do great things, and also shalt still prevail. So David went on his way, and Saul returned to his place. Okay, in our next message from 1 Samuel, we're going to specifically speak on the topic, why Saul never won. Why Saul never won. And there's going to be a lot of things revealed in that to state why he just was not a victor like David was a victor. And one of those reasons right here is because of the integrity of David, and even Saul knew that. And therefore Saul leaves, waking up to a situation, he leaves deeply ashamed. I should not have. Here I go again. How many times am I going to do this? And it all began because he was chasing the wrong pursuits in life, pursuits he should have never had in the first place. And therefore, he fell asleep. And this is a physical falling asleep, okay? We aren't trying to exaggerate the scriptures, but we are trying to speak on what Saul lost while he was sleeping and how we apply that to our spiritual lives. We lose some things while we are asleep spiritually. Wake up and start living for the glory of God again. Thank you for joining us in 1 Samuel 26. I pray that you will join us again next time. God bless you and have a wonderful day.